Hello everyone. The topic that we have chosen for our final project for negotiation is exploring the art and science of making a deal at the dinner table. This is the agenda of today. We have a lot of things to discuss and to further elaborate on, so let's deep dive straight into it. Maybe to give you a brief introduction, so as you know, food, drinks, using them to interact with people in a business setting, all these type of topics, they have been discussed and elaborated on for many years. Even like in the 1930s, there was this Italian futurist that wrote, great things have been achieved in the past by men who were poorly fed. However, what we think or dream and do is determined by what we eat and what we drink. There's also been many techniques that have been developed, for example, the luncheon technique, the most famous one by the psychologist Gregory Rudzran. The luncheon technique, it's actually the one that explains, okay, how do you convince someone over a meal? How can you persuade someone? And it's not before the meal, it's not after the meal, it's during the meal. So that is a concept that has been created. Of course, like also the word itself of companion, it comes from the Latin compani, which means the person you share bread with. So as you see, food, drinks, it plays a very important role in our society, and that's why our group thought it was very interesting to deep dive a bit more into how we can use this technique to actually apply to do better negotiations. Okay, so when analyzing whether or not food and drinks have an impact on decision making, there's actually several angles that we can take into account, different perspectives on the matter. The first one is the social aspect. Basically, the act of eating triggers the endorphin system in the brain. And these endorphins, they play a very important role in social bonding in human beings. In that sense, taking time to sit down with someone over a meal, it will help to create social networks. And these networks will have a profound effect, not just on your physical health, your mental health, but really just happiness and well-being as a whole. And even to the extreme, give you a sense of purpose in life. On top of that, sharing a meal also results in more social interactions, more positive social interactions, and actually it will also decrease the hierarchical displays. So that means there will be less dominance and submissiveness. So it will create more equal relationships between people. Some experiments have also shown that after food, when people share food together, afterwards they show very agreeable behaviors. They also have they have self-reported positive mood, which is very good. And also when they are shared the same food, they have more trust for each other. It's easier to actually smooth out problems, and it's easier for them to make a deal. So this is a very important aspect that will also influence the later part on the more business aspect. But this is an important one to keep in mind. Then another element is actually a study that has been done by Harvard with Cornell students. They did an experiment with the students that were about to enter the cafeteria and people that left and they just finished their lunch. So the people that were about to enter, they didn't have their food yet, so they were very hungry. And from that experiment, it seemed that they had a greater sense of entitlement, the people that didn't have lunch yet. They were also, they had the sense to act more selfishly, and they were also more likely to be dishonest than the people that already had left or had been fed. So here you can see two important aspects. When you go into a negotiation, I think it's more fun to go into a negotiation with someone who feels less entitled and who is less selfish, so someone that already has been fed in that sense. Another angle that we can analyze is the biochemical aspects of it. So the food intake is actually essential for maintaining homeostasis. What is homeostasis? It's a state of internal physical and chemical conditions, like the stable state, that is maintained within all living beings. So this is very necessary for survival. But on top of that, of course, this is also like the multiple biochemical processes also kind of influence our behavior. So this is the important aspect. So it's when you intake food, it will increase your glucose levels, which will lead in the end to better self-control, decreased aggression, as well as regulated prejudice. Then we have a third and final angle that we kind of approach is the business context. So taking all what we've learned before also into account here, when you go into a business context and you have a negotiation, how or to what extent can food actually be added value there to kind of achieve more agreeable outcome after the negotiation? So there's two aspects that you have to keep in mind. When you have a meeting, of course the meeting can be for different purposes. Let's say it's we have two types: a competitive meeting or a competitive negotiation, and a cooperative negotiation. So in the one, let's say there's only added value after the outcome for one party. A cooperative meeting means that, okay, there can be added value for both parties. So researchers have found that in competitive negotiations, food sharing was actually generating some uncertainty, because competition is associated with power moves, manipulation, deception, and when the counterparty is bringing in food, the other party might feel a bit uncertain about the actual purpose or the motives of the other party. Now, on the other hand, when you talk about cooperative meetings, actually researchers have found that in cooperative meetings, food can actually decrease alertness and the motivation. It might induce some sleepiness as well. So because they don't feel like the stakes are that high, so when you add food to the equation, it might actually lead to a less increase of added value for one party. So that is also something to take into account.
Moving on, we have already covered how food and drinks affect our decision making in business and social contexts. But now I'm gonna be looking at how hunger affects our decision making skills in our everyday lives. We're all guilty of skipping breakfast sometimes or delaying lunch because we're so hyper focused on a work project. But doing so may actually affect our decision making skills, which could ultimately affect our job performance and whether we make the best decisions in other facets of our lives. To give you a bit more perspective and scale to this, in a recent study, the researchers tested 50 study participants twice. Once when they had eaten normally and once on a day when they hadn't eaten at all. The team reported that if you offer people a reward today or double the reward in the future, participants are normally willing to wait for 35 days for double the reward, except when they're hungry. Hungry subjects are willing to wait only 3 days. And remember, this appeared to hold true even if the reward was not food related. So the concept of good things happening to those who wait may not apply when it comes to waiting too long to eat your meals. This recent study is also a great additional study to a prior well-known psychological study which involved children and marshmallows. The children were offered one marshmallow right away, or they could have two if they were willing to wait 15 minutes. The ones who were not willing to wait 15 minutes for two marshmallows were classified as being more impulsive. So, according to the study, hunger makes people more impulsive even when the decisions they're asked to do will do nothing to relieve their hunger. And one of the doctors on the study also made a very valid point. He said, "We hear of children going to school without having had breakfast. Many people are on calorie restriction diets, and lots of people fast for religious reasons. Hunger is so common that it is important to understand the non-obvious ways in which our preferences and decisions may be affected by it. So hence, we can conclude that decision making gets more present focused when people are hungry as opposed to when people have eaten. And we have also seen that people may choose instant gratification over waiting it out for a larger reward. Hence, we can say that food has a direct impact on our cognitive performance, which is why a poor decision at lunch can derail an entire afternoon. So, it is really important to not only avoid hunger pangs but also fuel our bodies and brains with nutrient rich foods. Life is full of decisions, but don't make them when you're hungry. Next, we found an interesting study on why IKEA, a furniture maker, sells food. So they noticed that a lot of customers left the store after wandering for a while in order to get something to eat. So they concluded that if consumers are hungry while shopping, they will most likely get distracted by hunger and will be unable to make decisions. Hence, the idea to provide food was to keep customers for a longer period of time so that they can make more purchasing decisions at the store. So while IKEA sells furniture, they do so with a little bit of innovation and a whole lot of food.
All over the world, people make friends by breaking bread together. Food is something that unites us all, and sitting down to eat food together is a simple yet a beautiful way to show people that you care. In addition to the nourishment that food provides, it helps you to connect with your loved ones, helps you to understand what is happening in their lives. Research suggests that simple act of sharing food can support your mental health and it makes you feel more satisfied with your life. Also, eating alone has negative effects associated with it. Two of them being, one, that when you eat alone, you tend to eat unhealthy food. And second is that when you eat alone, you alienate yourself from the society, which has negative effects on your mental health. So, a dinner table can be used as a unifier, as a place of community. So now let's deep dive into on how and why eating together can be used as a tool of negotiation. Yes, eating and drinking together can be used as a tool of negotiation. This is because sharing a meal or a drink with someone can create a sense of camaraderie and foster a more friendly and informal atmosphere. This can make it easier to build trust and establish more positive and productive relationship, which can facilitate a negotiation process. Sitting down to meal to talk business like drinking while negotiation is a common practice around the world. There's probably not a single executive or a public official who has never negotiated over a meal. Because eating is such a salient part of our lives, so it's important for us to look into how food can influence our negotiation. Researchers have recently started to examine the act of eating together while negotiating and its impact on the final deal. A recent study dwelled into the shared food experiences of firehouses, which have special culture of cooking and eating together because of firefighters' long shifts. The study found out a strong positive correlation between firefighters eating together and their group performance. It is believed that there's a biological explanation for this relationship as well. Eating together increases glucose levels, which leads to self-control, decreases aggression, and regulates our prejudice. These side effects positively influences the negotiation outcomes. Based on other studies, there's also a second explanation for these outcomes. While individuals eat together, they engage in mimicking or enacting movements that lead to a pro-social behavior and induce positive feelings about the other party. Both explanations are plausible, yet they rely on the increased cooperation following the commensality of the reason for a better outcome. To use eating and drinking as a negotiation tool, you can invite the other party to join you for a meal or a drink in a casual setting. This could be at a restaurant or a cafe or even just at a shared workspace. This could be to share snacks, beverages, or any kind of cuisine. The key is to create a relaxed and informal atmosphere where both parties can get to know each other better and feel comfortable talking openly and honestly. During the meal or the drink, it can be helpful to engage in small talk, or light conversations to break the ice and build rapport. You can also use time to discuss some common interests or experiences you may have. As the time progresses, you can gradually move into your negotiation itself, using the more informal and friendly atmosphere to facilitate a productive and a positive discussion. Overall, using eating and drinking as a negotiation tool can be an effective way to create more relaxed and informal atmosphere, which can help to build trust and facilitate a more positive and a successful negotiation. During the meal or the drink, you can use food as a way to engage in small, light conversations. For example, you can ask the other party about their food preferences and make recommendations based on your food experiences. This can help to build a sense of connection and create a more comfortable and friendly atmosphere. You can also use food as a way to demonstrate your own expertise or knowledge. For example, if you're negotiating with someone who is interested in food and cooking, you can share some interesting facts or insights about different ingredients or cooking techniques or a culinary tradition. This can help to establish your credibility and make the other party more receptive to your ideas and proposal. In addition, you can use food as a way to show appreciation to the other party. For example, you can offer the other party a small gift such as a bottle of wine, chocolates as a gesture of goodwill. This can help to build a more positive and a constructive relationship, which can make the negotiation process more successful.
The consumption of food and beverages is crucial during negotiations. It can have a significant impact on both the process and the outcome of the negotiation. By choosing the right type of food, you can increase the focus and the energy level of the participants, but by choosing the wrong type of food, it can have a more detrimental effect. In fact, negotiation choices can greatly be influenced by the type of food offered. And researchers have focused recently on the taste and how it affects human behavior and thoughts. They have specifically looked at the gustatory characteristics of flavors, including sweet, sour, bitter, and salty. That's what we're going to dive into. Let's now look into bitter food and sweet food and how both of these can influence negotiation outcome. So first, bitter food such as grapefruit juice, beer, and dark chocolate. As bitterness has been linked to unpleasant emotions such as anger, frustration, or irritability, it may make discussions more challenging. These feelings can make it difficult for a negotiator to think clearly, and it can lead to poor choices and outcomes. Additionally, when bitter tastes are experienced, people tend to be more pessimistic, which can result in more severe demands and a resistance to compromise. In rare situations, the presence of bitter food may also cause people to be more aggressive, hostile, and antagonistic, making it harder to achieve a mutually beneficial compromise. Additionally, bitter food can make people judge behavior more harshly. Sugar can also significantly impact negotiations. It can raise a negotiator's spirits and energy level, which can contribute to better judgment and a more fruitful result. It can also improve the degree of respect between the two parties, both of which are necessary to come to a consensus. During negotiations, sugar can also assist negotiators maintain their self-control and patience by keeping them alert and focused. Finally, sugar can assist in keeping peace and calmness during these tense negotiations. If we now look at the beverages and compare hot drinks and alcohol, we can understand what is their impact on negotiations. So first, serving hot beverages during a negotiation can make people feel cozy and at ease, which makes it easier for people to talk about challenging subjects and find win-win solutions. Additionally, hot beverages can break the ice and foster an atmosphere that is favorable to fruitful dialogue. Moreover, serving hot drinks can be viewed as a show of hospitality and generosity that fosters a relationship based on mutual respect and trust. In addition, holding a warm mug or bowl in the negotiator's hands make them look warmer and more approachable. On the other hand, serving alcohol can have a number of negative impacts on negotiation. It may result in poor judgment, more impulsivity, and less self-control. They may also cause negotiators to make choices that they would not have taken if they were sober, such as accepting more risk or terms that they would normally not have considered. Due to alcohol's tendency of impairing one's capability for clear thinking and speaking, it can also result in a breakdown in communication. And the more sober negotiator can also take advantage of the other one, which can result in a power and authority mismatch. Next, we can look at the impact of the type of food being served, such as tryptophan-rich food or dry food, and how it affects negotiations. Serving foods high in tryptophan, such as eggs, cheese, pineapple, tofu, before negotiation can help. Serotonin, a neurotransmitter that induces feelings of tranquility and well-being, is produced with the help of tryptophan, an important amino acid. Serotonin levels that are higher can help people concentrate and focus better and make better decisions or solve problems more efficiently, as well as communicate and negotiate more effectively. Both parties can reach a successful agreement with improved communication and negotiation abilities. Additionally, foods high in tryptophan can lessen stress and anxiety, which is always helpful during a negotiation. Due to the lack of energy that a dry ingredient brings, serving dry food at a negotiation table may have a detrimental effect on the process. Having dry food can make participants feel more tired and depleted of the energy necessary to fully participate in the negotiation process, as negotiations demand a high degree of concentration, energy, and inventiveness. Dry food can also reduce the hospitality of the atmosphere, which could cause a discomfort and make it harder to solve problems creatively. To quickly conclude on this part, food and drink can have a very significant impact on the negotiation process and outcome. We would recommend negotiators to serve sweet food or tryptophan-rich food, as well as hot drinks, rather than bitter food or dry food and alcohol. However, all these recommendations are generalities as proven through different studies. Sometimes the type of food served does not have that big of a significant impact on negotiation outcomes, or it can also be interpreted as the opposite of what it was intended. We therefore need to be careful when choosing the food we're serving, and we need to understand the whole context of the discussion. Therefore, Pierre will now develop how to use feasts as a tool of negotiation.
So what are some recommendable practices when using feast as a tool for negotiation? So according to Charles Spence, ordering the same food as the party you are trying to convince is required, as people who are served the same food are much more likely to trust one another, to smooth out problems and to make deals. Another good practice used in more the political context is the use of gastro-diplomacy as a soft power. So the aim is basically to provide national dishes abroad to increase the nation's influence. Finally, if you have knowledge about your guests' tastes and preferences, making use of this information in the choice of food and drinks is a great idea in order to place them in a good disposition. So this tip is especially relevant for one-to-one meals. Now we will dive into practice which should be avoided. So don't consume something more expensive than the people you are dining with or representing, as the food must be aligned with the purpose of the visit and the values of the parties involved. So for instance, the socialist French President François Hollande was criticized for eating caviar with Obama back in 2014. So this expensive food choice gave rise to comments such as the caviar left when he got back to France. Moreover, one must bear in mind that certain of our food likes and dislikes are genetically determined. So, for instance, about 20% of the population worldwide thinks that coriander tastes soapy. So such ingredients must absolutely be avoided. Likewise, about a quarter of the population are born with more taste buds on their tongues, and as such, they are much more likely to find foods such as coffee or cruciferous vegetables unpleasantly bitter. Lastly, don't engage in what is called gastro warfare, so that may involve trying to prevent the other party from eating or serving them some very heavy food in order to make them sleepy, or even refusing certain foods which may be associated with a particular nation. So this is definitely on good ways to negotiate, as it's best to take all the steps necessary to ease tensions and to facilitate agreeableness, rather than to use some techniques to achieve your goal viciously. So now we will go through a good example of what to do when using food for negotiation. So we will use a very recent example which happened when Joe Biden hosted a dinner at the White House for the French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte Macron. So what were the good practices in that dinner? The presentation and setting of the dinner conveyed a very strong positive first impression, which most likely pleased the two important French guests. Indeed, the tables were decorated with chandeliers and flowers of both the country's colors. So displaying chandeliers on the dining table was another good gesture, as they have a rather romantic association, which suits perfectly the hosting of a couple. So as for the drinks chosen, in that case 3 American wines, they were chosen for their special relation with France, as they were either founded by Frenchmen or owned by French companies. Not to mention that Emmanuel Macron is a wine lover, and wine has a long history on the political dining scene. As for the food they ate, beef and lobster are rich in tryptophan, which is, as we have seen, a very desirable practice in gastrodiplomacy. The choice of caviar, although slightly bitter, honors the presence of a valuable guest. The desserts were all sweet and thus very likely to encourage positive behavior. And including American cheese was a good trade-off, as it promotes America while honoring French tradition, as cheese plays an essential part in the meal in France. Overall, this dinner displayed some nice trade-offs in the nationality of the food chosen, as it subtly married both nations. So while American products were primarily showcased, it is understandable given the context of the meal, a dinner at the White House. What matters is that France was nonetheless represented and respected throughout the dinner, which made the guests feel at ease and valued. So this example also showed that properly presenting the meals and preparing a nice setting for the occasion has a very primordial role, as while we know that food undeniably influences negotiation, having a nice context to accompany them only further highlights the benefits on negotiations.